people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap. We're going to kick it off with Ramla Ali's super bantamweight contest against the Dominican Republic's own Crystal Garcia Nova. I did go with Ramla Ali by way of knockout, though I did think it would last more than just a round, just a single round. Crystal Garcia Nova's got what they call a lazy jab. It's a jab that can be countered. It's a jab to where you don't get the hand back to that side of your face to protect it fast enough, so you end up getting hit upside the head. She's got a lot of holes in her offense, a lot of holes in her defense. That's how Ramla Ali was able to connect with that big right hand between the shots, between the punches, and finish off with a little body shot. Sent Crystal Garcia Nova to the deck, and she stayed there. She stayed down. Seemed to a lot of people that Crystal Garcia Nova could have gotten up and could have kept fighting, but made a decision not to, and I agree with those people. I share in that sentiment because, oh yeah, it was a hard right hand, but Crystal was still conscious. Crystal Garcia Nova's last fight, she retired on her stool. In some circles, she quit on her stool against Thailand's own Fenere Natisri. So it doesn't surprise me that Crystal Garcia Nova absorbed a hard shot and made the decision to stay down. She's more or less quit before. In many ways, it seems like she quit here. She quit again. This was an opportunity for Ramla Ali to make history on a very big stage. I was expecting Ramla Ali to win by way of knockout. I have to admit I expected a little bit more resistance from Crystal Garcia Nova than what we got, though all the same, it was the outcome that I expected. And because the fight ended so abruptly, because it really didn't get to turn into a fight, I see no reason that Ramla Ali shouldn't get back out there at least one more time before this year is out. She advanced to a professional record of 7 wins, no losses, and no draws with 2 knockouts. Maybe she'll advance to a record of 8-0 if they set her up another fight, another experience-building, developmental fight. I see no reason why not. Ramla Ali does have somewhat of a following, gets a lot of support. A lot of support from the Somali community. She's a model, she's a philanthropist, she's a boxer, and she has genuine crossover appeal, racking up highlight reel knockouts like this one. It won't take long for her career to take off. So I say get her back out there as soon as possible. Congratulations to Ramla Ali for living up to my expectations. We then come to the light heavyweight contest, the WBC final eliminator in order to crown a mandatory challenger for reigning unified light heavyweight champion Artur Beterbiev. The fight between Callum Smith and France's own bronze medalist, Olympian Mathieu Bauderlique. And as stated, as I predicted, Callum Smith not only secured the victory, he secured the knockout. I wasn't confident that Mathieu Bauderlique's Olympic pedigree made for a world-class light heavyweight in the pros. Because this ain't the Emmys. Mathieu, the Olympian, Mathieu Bauderlique, the southpaw, I wasn't convinced he packed a big enough punch to get Callum Smith's respect or even hurt him, and I wasn't convinced that he took the best punch having been knocked out some years ago in 2017. I figured if Callum can land clean on this guy, he can take him out. That's what he did. I'd say it took Callum Smith about 1 or 2 rounds to really get his range down and get in a groove, and once he did, he started landing clean shots on Mathieu Bauderlique, and you saw the effect that they had. The effect those shots had on Mathieu. The difference in power between the two combatants was noteworthy. It was notable, and I maintained my original position that Callum Smith doing what he did to Lennon Castillo, an otherwise durable and proven light heavyweight, tough customer, him knocking that guy out the way that he did, had no doubts that he could take out Mathieu Bauderlique as well. A couple of body shots later and a short left hook mid-range to inside. Mathieu Bauderlique hit the deck for the second time, and the referee waved this thing off, and just like that, Callum Smith is now in world title contention in the light heavyweight division, though in truth, I don't know that he'll actually get the chance to share the ring with Artur Beterbiev, who is now decommissioned for the rest of the year, having suffered that injury. What was supposed to be the Anthony Yarde fight, set to go down in the fall, it's now been pushed back till next year.
If Callum is going to share the ring with the winner of that fight, it ain't going to be no time soon.
Tack on the politics that Callum Smith, at least right now, he's a matchroom fighter, whereas Artur Beterbiev, he's over there on the top-ranked side of things. And should Eddie Hearn push for a purse bid in order to do the fight on the DAZN platform, what will Artur Beterbiev and his team and his promoter, what will they elect to do? It's too soon to tell how all of that is going to play out, because upon Artur's return, he's going to have to deal with Anthony Yarde first.
Callum don't even come into it until much later on.
The saving grace for Artur Beterbiev is that he has satisfied a mandatory challenger for the WBC in the last 12 months. Late last year, he took on Staten Island's own Marcus Brown, though given that he's going to sit out the rest of this year, and when he returns, he's going to face Anthony Yarde first early next year.
By the time he comes back, the next mandatory challenger for the WBC might be due.
There's no mandatory challenger selected yet by way of the IBF, the other alphabet title that Artur Beterbiev holds, so he's got time with them, and even now, he does have some time.
Still within the grace period with WBC, though time is running out.
I like this version of Callum Smith. He's a deadlier, more dangerous fighter under the tutelage and the watchful eye of veteran fighter and trainer Buddy McGirt, though I don't actually know that he will get the chance to fight Artur for that green belt and the other two alphabet titles. I don't know if that's how this cookie is going to crumble. It's too soon to tell.
But the prediction stuck, and Artur Beterbiev knocked out Matthew Bauderlique. Congratulations to him.
We then come to the heavyweight contest between Croatia's own Olympic amateur standout Filip Hrgovic and China's own amateur standout, unbeaten Zhilei Zhang, who in the eyes of a lot of people deserved the decision, deserved to get the nod. Filip Hrgovic really did get more than he bargained for, and looking at the fight,
He got dropped early.
how could the guy that languished, that went life or death with veteran journeyman Jerry Forrest, go in there and give Filip Hrgovic, who is tabbed to be this division's boogeyman, how could that same guy give Filip more than he bargained for? And I think it's
a combination of things. I didn't realize that Filip Hrgovic had enlisted the aid of Ronnie Shields.
Those of you that have been following this channel long enough will know that I don't have a very high opinion of Ronnie Shields. In fact, I think a good number of fighters have looked less than spectacular on Ronnie Shields' watch. Ronnie Shields is not a...
Filip Hrgovic didn't trade up, let me tell you.
Couple that with Zhilei Zhang being a southpaw, it seems that Zhilei Zhang couldn't miss Filip Hrgovic with the straight left hand, his backhand, as
He landed that punch a couple of times, and he was landing it early. You could see it was having an effect on Filip, who got more than he bargained for.
really don't think Filip Hrgovic was expecting all of this. You know, Filip, he doesn't have the fastest hands as far as heavyweights go. In truth, most of these guys really aren't big on speed.
So the difference in speed between Zhilei Zhang's punches and Filip Hrgovic's...
There wasn't much of a discrepancy there, even though there was a glaring discrepancy in the fighters' ages. Zhilei Zhang is 9 years older than Filip Hrgovic. This is a guy who's pushing 40, but if there wasn't a difference in speed, or much of a difference in speed between Zhang's punches and Filip Hrgovic's punches, it's because, well, neither one of these guys are particularly fast to begin with. In truth, most heavyweights in the heavyweight division today,
Most of them, even the young ones, they're not particularly fast.
you'd be hard-pressed to find 5 heavyweights with notoriable hand speed. I mean, real hand speed in the heavyweight division today. You'd be hard-pressed to find 5 up-and-comers, 5 veterans, 5 contenders.
There wasn't much of a difference in hand speed between Filip and Zhilei Zhang.
Wasn't much of a discrepancy in spite of the glaring discrepancy in the fighters' ages. That Zhilei Zhang's pushing 40, whereas Filip Hrgovic, he's supposed to be in his prime years, 30 years old. And you notice the counter shots from Zhilei Zhang as well. They really had an effect on Filip Hrgovic. This is the worst I've ever seen
I
it.
saw him get hurt at least 2 or 3 times in there. I saw him get buzzed.
But I also saw him rally back. I also saw him win a couple of rounds. Was it enough that this was a decisive victory over unbeaten Zhilei Zhang? No, I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't say that.
Decisive is a 4-letter word when you're talking about this fight.
I liked Zhilei Zhang's punch selection, the way he was getting shots through the guard and around it, more than I liked Filip Hrgovic's activity. There were moments when he was the busier fighter, the busier puncher.
Zhilei Zhang landed a lot of eye-catching catching shots mid-range to inside, whereas Philippe Hrgovic,
when he was putting punches together and letting his hands go, it seemed like a lot of those shots were landing on the arms and gloves. Zhang Zhang's arms and gloves. He covered up well.
seemed to me like effective aggression and clean punching would have had to have gone to Zhang.
Defense as well in the rounds that Zhang did win, whereas in the rounds that Philippe Hrgovic won, the rounds you could have given Philippe, you could have given him rounds on activity, but just activity alone.
He got through with a couple of good right hands here and there, but most of the eye-catching shots and the eye-catching punches, they were coming from Zhang.
Gotta tell you, this is not what I predicted. This is not what I expected. I expected that Philippe Hrgovic would secure the W. I expected that Philippe Hrgovic would win the fight, but I didn't think it would go the distance. In fact, I didn't think it would reach the midway point. Perhaps I overestimated.
I didn't give Zhang enough credit, and I gave Philippe Hrgovic too much credit.
I think he's very lucky, very fortunate to have been given the decision in this fight. He's very fortunate to still have an unbeaten, unblemished record, and now he is the IBF's mandatory challenger for Alexander Usyk, this division's reigning unified champion. No telling on when that mandate, when that order will come down for Usyk to be so confronted with Philippe Hrgovic.
But he's in line. He is in world title contention, for better or worse, whether you agree with it or not, whether I agree with it or not.
By way of the IBF, he is in line. He is in position. In some ways, the prediction stuck. Philippe Hrgovic did win the fight, perhaps not in the fashion that I expected, the fashion that I predicted, but he did secure the W. In truth, I think Zhang just raised his stock.
Yeah, maybe Hrgovic got the decision, but Zhang just proved that win or lose, he can be in an entertaining fight.
Can put on a show, and I could go for a Zhang versus Derek Chisora fight or a Zhang versus Dillian Veit fight.
Yeah, it's possible. If you go out there and you lay it all on the line, you can raise your stock in victory or defeat.
We then come to the main event of that same card, the long-anticipated, long-awaited rematch between Anthony Joshua, the challenger, and Alexander Usyk, the champion. And unfortunately, when it came to this fight, the prediction didn't stick. A lot of people were convinced in the buildup of this thing that it would end in a knockout, that either Anthony Joshua would
He'd end up steamrolling Usyk, or Usyk would end up knocking him out.
because he came close the last time towards the tail end of the match, the tail end of the fight. Just before the fight, I thought to myself, I'm not expecting Anthony Joshua to just...
Not expecting him to just steamroll Alexander Usyk, because Alexander Usyk's not the kind of guy that just gets steamrolled.
For my money, he's got the best feet, the best movement in today's heavyweight division, having natural athleticism that your average heavyweight in the heavyweight division today doesn't have.
Nope. I decided to be more conservative with my prediction, and I decided to go with Anthony Joshua on points. And Anthony Joshua split decision.
Perhaps a controversial one. I anticipated that Anthony Joshua, in preparation for this rematch, perhaps made the necessary adjustments to where he can have a better showing in the second fight than he did in the first, and for the most part, I think he did. He just came up short in certain areas. I gave the first round to Alexander Usyk, and being honest, not a lot happened in that round. It was a bit hard to separate them.
But what stood out is that Usyk did seem the ring general in the first round.
That whatever was happening, or whatever wasn't happening, was or wasn't happening on Usyk's terms more than Anthony Joshua's.
So I gave the first round to Alexander Usyk, even though it was a bit hard to separate them. I gave the second round to Anthony Joshua.
It was a tense and tight round, but the most eye-catching shot of the round was an Anthony Joshua right hand to the body.
In that round, much like the first round, not a lot happened outside of a few eye-catching shots from Anthony Joshua. Most noteworthy,
A right hand to the midsection, a right hand to the body.
so I gave the first round to Usyk, the second round to Anthony Joshua. I had Alexander Usyk picking up the third round.
Behind his movement and his counters, Anthony Joshua still seemed quite tentative. Shades of the first fight in those first 3 rounds. It just felt like Anthony Joshua wasn't doing enough yet, wasn't letting his hands go.
He still looked tentative. He still looked hesitant.
I gave Alexander Usyk the 4th round. Joshua falling just behind Usyk, who was beating him to the punch, controlling the pace. It was an eventful round, but I felt Anthony Joshua needed to turn this thing around because it was getting away from him, and it was getting away from him early. You saw Alexander Usyk peppering Anthony Joshua with shots, and Anthony would try to respond and end up hitting nothing but air. He wasn't landing clean.
I had Alexander Usyk up 3 rounds to 1 by the end of the 4th.
4 rounds to 1 by the end of the 5th, and it was more of the same in the 5th round, more the same things we saw in the fourth round. It seemed like Anthony Joshua was just a step behind Alexander Usyk.
He got through with 1 or 2 body shots in the first couple of rounds, but it wasn't a sustained attack. Shots were far and few.
I did have Anthony Joshua picking up the 6th round off some eye-catching body shots that landed in the pocket.
Usyk was just fiddling around a lot in that round. He wasn't landing very many clean shots, whereas the eye-catching punches, the eye-catching shots
were coming from Anthony Joshua by way of his body work in the pocket.
just barely nicked that round for me, but I gave it to him.
Gave Anthony Joshua the 6th round. I gave Anthony Joshua the 7th round for the same reason.
Usyk was just moving his hands a lot in that round. He wasn't really getting off.
And the most eye-catching punch, the most eye-catching shot of the entire round was a right hand from Anthony Joshua. By the 8th round, I had it 4-4, tie score. Joshua's body shots were catching up to Usyk in the 8th, and Usyk's movement was dissipating. It looked like his legs were starting to slow down, and he was starting to wilt.
Anthony Joshua started rallying back in the middle of this fight.
4-4 after 8, 5-4 after 9.
After 9 rounds, I had Anthony Joshua up by a point.
This was Anthony Joshua's strongest round so far. Usyk's hands were beginning to drop. He was eating clean jabs, and the body work, the body shots, that was working for Anthony Joshua as well. It looked like Alexander Usyk was finally starting to wilt and finally starting to gas out. Though after Anthony Joshua had a very strong 9th round, Alexander Usyk came back and had a very strong 10th round.
After 10 rounds, I had it tied, 5-5. Usyk had a strong showing in the 10th, showing combinations and clean punches.
Joshua looked spent, looked gassed in the 10th.
The 11th was a swing round for me.
It was a round where Alexander Usyk seemed busier, though the eye-catching punches and the eye-catching shots were the body shots from Anthony Joshua. It was a bit hard to separate them. You could have given that round to Usyk, you could have given it to Anthony Joshua. But when it comes to the 12th and final round, for me, that was a clear Usyk round. So the way that breaks down, you've essentially got 6 rounds to Usyk and at least 4 to 5 rounds for Anthony Joshua, plus 1 swing round.
If you swing that 11th round to Joshua, it's a draw. If you swing it to Usyk, Usyk wins.
7-5, Usyk wins.
Unfortunately, Anthony Joshua didn't do enough early enough.
He was too hesitant at the start and started off at a deficit. He didn't really turn it on until the midway point of the match, and by then he had some catching up to do. Alexander Usyk's powers of recovery and his wherewithal helped him win this thing, though I will say Anthony Joshua's got nothing to be ashamed of because he didn't get outclassed in there. He did, in fact, perform better in this rematch than he did the first time out, than he did in the first fight. And his cardio, it actually held up.
Didn't look chinny, didn't look gassed, didn't look worn out.
He actually made Usyk look human, which is saying a lot because that doesn't happen very often.
Closing thoughts? I don't see a fighter that needs to retire.
I don't see a fighter that's ripe for the picking. I see a fighter that can rebound from this.
I see a fighter who's still young, still exciting, and still can put asses in the seats.
A fighter who's coming off his 2nd consecutive loss and his 3rd overall, but a fighter who can rebound.
And as far as Usyk, the reigning unified champion, we know what his focus is.
Undisputed. So make it happen.